Well, thanks for coming out and spending your afternoon with us. When Cam told me, when Cam asked me to come speak, I thought it was going to be a much smaller group. We were going to have coffee and talk about product management. This is great, though. So thanks for coming out. Hopefully, I'll have something of interest for you today. What we're going to talk about is AI and discovery specifically in product management. It's close to my heart as someone in product, especially as someone who does active product development. There we go. So I'm Gary Koelling. I'm currently at Bison Transport, based out of Winnipeg. I'm still in Minneapolis, but I'm director of product for Bison Transport. Prior to that, I worked at C.H. Robinson. I worked at Mid-Atlantic Distributors, Buyer's Edge, and Best Buy many years ago. I know some of you have seen some familiar faces here from Best Buy from those days. So the stuff that you're going to see today, I want to be very clear, is not, it's fictional use case material generated from years of working in the transportation space. So what you're going to see today is not directly from any given company that I've worked for, but it's fictionalized, generalized information for the purposes of the demonstration today. If you want to find me on LinkedIn, feel free. I love connecting with anybody who wants to connect. So show of hands, who's lost their keys ever? A couple of you have lost your keys. And the first place you look, pocket, purse. Second place you look, other pocket, not there, grumble, grumble, grumble. Maybe a third place where pocket should be, but is not there right now. Because why wouldn't you check there, right? You go to the places that you assume it's going to be, even if there's no good reason to think that they are there. And then when you discover that it's not in the places that you thought it was going to be, there's a more determined expletive, probably not suitable for children. And then you acknowledge that there's a catastrophe, because without the keys, you can't get in the house. You can't move the car. You can't do whatever it is that you want it to do. You're stuck. You're completely stuck. And so this is when discovery begins. Usually you find them in the freezer, at least the first time you find them in the freezer, which is unexpected, but that's where you find them. And so, but that's discovery, right? It's a lot of times it's forced upon us, even as product managers, even as people who want to do discovery, who want to build products, who want to understand our users. A lot of times it's forced upon us because the answers that we're looking for aren't always in the places that we expect them to be or that we want them to be. For me, what I've discovered over the years is that what we call continuous discovery is probably the most important and the most difficult part of product management. It's not just the thing that you do at the beginning to get to know your users for the first time or get to know your market for the first time. Do your pricing exercises, do your product requirements documentation. It's not just that. It's the ongoing paying attention. It's the ongoing discovery. It's the ongoing analysis of the data, of the user patterns, of the market that is the continuous part of the discovery. And it's the thing that makes the difference between products that really crush it and products that start to go to sleep, right? But it's difficult for the reasons that we all are familiar with. We want to go to the places that we think we have the answers. So what is discovery, right? When we talk about not going to the places that always contain the answers. So how I've tended to define it is the product discovery is the act of repeatedly diving into the unknown, trusting that each attempt will reveal something new, even if all you're finding is the boundaries of the problem. In fact, a lot of times that's what you do find. Like a lot of times that's all you find is the boundaries of the problem. You don't necessarily find the solution. You don't even necessarily find the right problem. You just find the boundaries. But the thing to remember, this is where it gets difficult again, because we as humans, we want solutions, is that it's not about finding perfect answers. It's about getting good at asking better and better and better questions, even when you're tired of asking questions. It's hard. It's hard. There are many days where I'm tired of it, of asking the questions. I just want to do the thing that I have the intuition to do. I know what the answer is. I've seen this problem a million times. Just do this thing that I'm telling you to do. Don't make me bring you more evidence, right? But every time that I force myself to go back and look at the evidence or do the analysis, inevitably, I find out that it was worth it. I found a thread of something new. I found a new insight, or I found a problem that didn't exist before, but has emerged, right? And maybe it's not directly related to the thing that I was working on. Maybe it's adjacent, and I'll get to it later, but it's still critical. And the act of doing discovery is valuable, but it's hard. For me, I find it incredibly hard. And I think most teams struggle with the same thing. The people that I work with struggle with the same thing, because we all assume that we know what's wrong. And the longer we do it, the more prone or the more likely we are to mistake experience. We've spent a lot of time in the space. We've talked to the customer. We've seen the product cycle. We've been in the, in the checkout. We've examined it over and over. We've watched the heat, we've looked at the heat maps. We've watched the click videos. We've seen it all. And we have the experience, and we mistake that experience for insight. And the patterns that we see, we mistake those for truth. And it's not that they're not valuable, they are valuable, but they're not the truth. You have to ask more questions. You have to get the dispositives out of the way. You have to question, is this really what we think it is? We need to validate. And what ends up happening a lot of times is we move really fast, because we like to move fast. We like to get to conclusions, but we do it in the completely wrong direction. And there's nothing more expensive than solving the wrong problem. So, question, observe, validate, and always check your expectations. When you do it, right, it works, right? And there are ways to do it. You do customer interviews and you do observation. You get them, you meet with them, you do ride-alongs with them. You ask the open-ended questions. You get really good at listening. You use the 5 whys, right? You drill down into the root cause. You build journey maps and you use the jobs to be done framework, You identify your personas. You identify what job is it that they're hiring the product to do. You formulate your KPIs to prove the thing that you're doing the right thing. There's lots of great tools to do discovery. Sometimes there's almost too many tools. Anyone get the feeling that there's too many tools? Yeah. I think there are too many tools. But largely what you get is you get a better understanding of your user needs. You validate some of your assumptions, or you validate that you had the wrong assumption. And you identify root causes, and you get some sizing for the impact. How important is this? Now I can prioritize it. Where does it go in my backlog? Do I pull it into this sprint, or do I wait? It's incredibly important when you're building products. The benefits, one of the key benefits is that you move all the risks to the front and you drop your chances of building solutions for the wrong problems. You get better alignment with your user needs, right? You build something that they actually find useful. And you make more efficient use of your resources, better development efforts, more efficient development efforts. Sounds great, right? Everyone agrees. Yeah. And it works until it doesn't. And why doesn't it work? We sort of talked about this. As talking apes, one of the things that we're really good at is seeing patterns, right? In fact, we're too good at it. We see patterns, we see things, we see meaning a lot of times, whereas there's just random noise. It's just moisture particles aligned in the sun in a certain pattern, right? The other thing that we've got going against us is we hate uncertainty. We crave to know the answer. And living with ambiguity, it's on who has not seen living with ambiguity or being comfortable with ambiguity on a job description? All of them. You must be comfortable with ambiguity, right? Okay. The other thing that we love to do is tell elaborate stories. In fact, we will go out of our way to tell a story that convinces us, ourselves and others around us, of the facts that we already have in our head, the solution that we're dying to put into action. We will tell the most fantastic, elaborate stories. We will spend tremendous amount of effort gathering evidence to support an assumption or a point of view that we walked into the room with. And we'll spend tremendous amount of energy convincing other people. And we'll even stamp our feet on the ground if they don't agree with us. I've seen that happen a couple of times, once. And in doing that, we forget that we're really looking for different perspectives, right? We need to move around. We need to get out and keep talking to our customers. We need to talk to them in places that we haven't talked to them before. We need to ask them questions that we haven't asked them before in ways that we haven't asked before. I was just earlier this week, I was interviewing some folks at one of our locations in Wisconsin, talking to some drivers. And I don't know if you've ever done interviews with users of your product, but it's a very touchy thing, right? There's an art to it, right? And the interview was going great. They had sort of relaxed, starting to get some real honest feedback. And I reached for my pen and started taking notes, and that was the end of the conversation. They shut down. And I was I knew better than that, but I had to get this one particular, and that was the end of the useful part of that conversation. So, but you need to get out there. You need to keep talking. You need to keep asking why, and you need to keep doing it from different vectors, because you need to continue to challenge your assumptions about what you think you know about your product. Because once you stop doing that, there's someone right behind you, a competitor, who's been making a living challenging the assumptions that you make every day, right? That's what they do. And then, of course, I think one of the things that we tend to forget, because it's also a bit of a pain in the butt, is to validate what we find with data. And if we don't have the data, we need to find ways to instrument something to gather the data. Sure, I'll do my best. Okay, got it, Mark. Right, so we need to validate with data. And if we don't have the data, we need to find ways to instrument our product to gather that data. And if we can't instrument directly, then we need to use what we think are reasonable proxies for that data. Sometimes we don't even have reasonable proxies. Let me give you an example of where discovery has come in handy recently, specifically an AI I'm going to get to. I know the whole thing here is about AI, and we haven't talked about AI yet. I'm getting to it. There's a big reveal at the end. Trust me. So, big customer calls up one day and says, "You guys suck. Your shipment updates are terrible. I don't get them. You don't tell me, when you're picking up, when you're delivering. And your performance is terrible. You're late to pick up, you're late to delivery. What What's going on? Why do you suck? Fix it. And of course, who takes the phone call? Sales guy takes the phone call. So what happens when sales guy takes the phone call? Sales guy also takes the request from the customer about how to fix it. And he turns around and says, guess what? Big Cust is going to leave unless we use this preferred tracking service that they have identified for us. How long will that take? Not can we do it, should we do it, why would we do it, how long until we can do it or until it's done, which is common. Has anyone had this experience? Couple people. Okay, good. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. And so the first thing that happens is you get a little bit rattled. You're like, oh shit, Big Cust is going to leave. We don't want that. So maybe we should just do this preferred tracking service, right? And so you send a group with headlamps down into the hole and say, go connect, the preferred tracking service. But there's this voice in the back of your head that's saying, is it really the preferred tracking service that's going to save us? Or is there something else? So you gather another group together and you say, I'm not sure this is exactly what's going to work. So let's do some discovery. Let's look at some data. Let's understand what's the problem. So an initial unpack of the data says, yeah, it's bad. We do suck. 40% of the loads, only 40% of the loads are being picked up on time. Fewer than 40% are getting regularly updated to the customer. And fewer than 30 of those are sent within the 1 hour window that they're telling us that they want it. And they told all of this to us. These were their expectations when they signed the contract. So yes, they are right. We're not doing what they asked us to do. We have a problem. But is the service that they're asking for really what we want? Maybe. Let's look a little deeper. Let's talk to the stakeholders. Let's talk to the technical people. Let's talk to the account managers who run the business. Let's talk to the people who are in operations that actually look at the tracking, talk to the carriers, the people doing the deliveries. Let's find out what they're saying. Let's go out and let's gather some notes. So let's go do some interviews. What we find out is that even though our on-time percentage is really poor, we've got GPS tracking on 75% of the vehicles doing the delivery. So we should have tracking for at least 75% of all the orders that are going through our system, but we don't. So what's going on? Oh yeah, but we are having some integration issues with some of these third-party services, and so maybe some of the data is dropping out there on its way to the customer. The system treats any sort of variations in the timing as an error, and it's difficult for us to know what Big Cust wants versus what there's lots of details, right? There's lots of details that you unpack when you go through the interview with the stakeholders. So let's put together a quick journey map. Okay, what happens? Equipment arrives at the pickup location. GPS is activated and received. Pickup confirmation is sent. Yep, that's what we want. That's what's happening, right? But the compliance is still off. We're still not getting it. So what do we do next? Told you we'd get to it. AI, right? So I put together a little thing called Agent Disco. You're free to go there right now. I'll take you through a quick demo of what it's not a live demo. I'm not that much of a masochist. I know what live demos are like. I pre-did some of this stuff and I'll walk you through it. But what I've done is I've taken some discovery frameworks like the 5 whys, jobs to be done, opportunity solution, tree mapping, a bunch of different discovery frameworks, and I've trained a custom GPT called Agent Disco to be able to help analyze some of this information, right? So one of the things that I did last night before I got here was I took my fake notes And I went to ChatGPT and I said, I hit the prompt and I said, take me through a root cause discovery session. And it said, sure, let's define the problem and let's identify some of the symptoms and patterns. Then we would apply the 5 whys technique and validate with data. And then we can identify and prioritize the solutions. Sounds great. Let's start with step 1. And on step 1, I uploaded my GlobeTran Big Cuss stakeholder interview notes that talks about the conversations that I had with stakeholders, the operations people who told me, you know, sometimes the connections are a little bit dicey. Sometimes the rules are a little too strict. If someone is 2 minutes late, then they get counted late, or sometimes the equipment doesn't work or whatever it is. I put all of those notes in here, and it says, okay, step 1, let's take a look at your stakeholder notes and see what's in here. And it kicks back to me. Does this seem to be the problem? That your service level breaches and operational efficiencies aren't aligning with what you're trying to, that you've got massive manual interventions. Yeah, you've got massive manual interventions because of tracking failures. Yes, this seems to be the problem. Terrific. Let's look at some symptoms. Here are the key symptoms from the stakeholder interviews. The second one that they highlighted is you have high manual workload, where you have customer service representatives spending 80% of their time manually updating tracking data due to system rigidity. Sort of sticks out. System rigidity, what does that actually mean? The system rejects valid GPS data if the pickup time varies even slightly. This is something that's in the code, that's reflected in the data, and came through in the interview notes that didn't even register, right? There was too much of it. There was too much data. There was too much in the interview notes. Didn't quite pick it up. But you put it in here, you give it some structure, and it kicks back and it says, here are the things that we think are the biggest reasons why Big Cuss is pissed. Yeah, that seems right. Well, let's look at the 5 whys technique and apply this. Why are they failing to meet SLAs? Because we default to manual. Why are we defaulting to manual? Because small delays are treated as major errors. Why does tracking reject these small delays? Because it was designed for perfect pickup conditions. Why was it designed this way? Oh, good question. I don't know that this can answer that. But what's happening here is it's found this bit that I was blind to because I had certain assumptions about how the system was supposed to work, right? They show up on time, within the window, we gather the GPS data, send it, move on. This is saying, yeah, that's right, but your window's way too rigid. And if you fail to land it within the window, there's no forgiveness. You're just done, which drops your numbers through the floor, which is why your customer is pissed. So yes, the root cause was identified. System tracking is too rigid. It took 3 prompts to get there. It took a lot of interview notes and a pull of some data. But this is something that I couldn't have got to on my own. Maybe another product manager could have gotten there, but they're too busy. In fact, they've got the headlamps on and they're down there trying to figure out how to connect to this other system that Big Cuss has asked us to connect to. So now let's validate with the data. So I put in the order data where we're picking up, showing the pickup time, the GPS data, et cetera, and it says, yes, you have GPS tracking for 75% of the fleet. Yes, your CSRs, your customer service reps are still spending 80% of the time doing manual tracking updates, even though 75% of your fleet has GPS. This leads to a fictional amount of extra labor cost and reiterating the customer complaint. the point of this particular AI is that I got tired. I got tired of trying to find needles in haystacks, and I got tired of not finding them, right? And of chasing good ideas in a bad direction and solving the wrong problems. So where AI is concerned, I think there's lots of cool things that you can do with AI. I was just talking to David before this. I think in certain cases, you want to be careful, you know, what domain you're using AI for, because a lot of times it doesn't give you the precision that you want or that you might need if you're launching missiles. But if you're doing discovery, it can help keep you between the lines, and help focus you when you're really tired of having to focus, and help you find some of these insights that can make a huge difference. Some of the best products are the best products, not because they make the biggest leaps, but because they make the most strategic nudges. And it takes a hell of a lot of work from your product managers. So a little bit of effort from an AI to help them stay between the lines, I think could be worth it. That's what I got. Yes, I will take questions. First, I would just want to, I know you were saying after this, if folks want to break up into groups for 30 minutes or so, you're welcome to go and use this GPT to sort of hang out in a group and play with it a little bit if you want, to see if it actually can help you do some discovery. But yes, questions.
Yeah, I was just gonna say real quick, could you repeat the question so we can pick it up?
Yeah, yes. Cam said, will you take questions? Yes.
Instead of ChatGPT, machine learning, whatever, called unified modeling language.
Yes.
In enterprise and everything was, instead of asking questions, it was optimization of business processes.
Yes.
So every function, the input, output, measurement, and everything. So how is that related? Maybe it's just replace UML.
So the question is, does this replace UML? Is it complementary to unified? What's UML again?
It's unified
Modeling language, right?
Object-oriented programming or industrial.
Right.
There was way model process.
Right. Yeah.
Time as a programmer or an industrial engineer want to optimize something.
Yeah.
I will go through the UML model or whatever, and trying to optimize it from input, output, etc. in the chain of events.
Yeah.
So what I see right now, it's a replication of old-fashioned way using UML with LLM and ChatGPT. So is it something?
Yes, I do think it assists in, you know, helping you to understand what are the pieces in the process that you're trying to examine. For me, though, the difference is that all of the data that you take in, all of the information that you take in, whether it's qualitative, quantitative data, is what the human in the past had to do the computations on in order to build these models, right? I haven't trained this with any UML structures, but I will after I go home. Yes, right here.
In talking to a lot of companies, one of the biggest fears is uploading data.
Yes.
Company data. So what's your approach on that? Or how do you decide, yes, this is okay to upload, or maybe this is something that's not?
Yeah. I don't do it.
So that example you just showed wasn't.
I'm kidding. She says, what are the fears around, or what are the options around uploading proprietary data, proprietary company information? It's a great question. I don't have a perfect answer for it, but what I can tell you is that when I have used it to do discovery like this, I anonymize the data as much as I can. Directionally, it's accurate, right? But it has no PII. It's effectively an anonymous twin of the data, right? And I usually use a much smaller data set right? Same thing when I'm talking about interview notes. It's I don't use any industry-specific nomenclature. I'll replace nouns with more generic descriptions. I don't know if that solves the problem or doesn't solve the problem, but it's a real concern, and I don't think we have real solutions for it yet.
No, I appreciate that, thank you.
Somewhat of a solution is you can go into your settings under data and change, or it says improve the model for everyone, you turn that off. And it reduces the amount of information that's shared.
So the comment is, in your settings, you can turn off a setting that shares your data to improve the experience for everyone, so.
Can I just, what I used to do for, tell all of our employees is if you wouldn't put it on the internet, don't put it in here. And that means you can change it. But pretend you're on a forum. That's the way I would advise our employees.
Yeah. Yeah,
I was just wondering if you have been using the reasoning or logic models for doing this, or is that too confining when you're at the discovery stage?
no, I have not been using any of those for this. I've been using the sort of the standard 4.0 model. I haven't even experimented with that yet. I'm sorry, she asked, have I used any of the other logic models in doing this? And the answer is no, I haven't done that yet. There are some things I would like to try, some of the other models I would like to try. There's also some actions that I would like to try with this, so. David?
Interesting that you said your focus is on continuous and kind of incremental discovery, thinking about the things that you get blind to because we're so immersed in the situation. By the way, think of the being beginner's mind. How do we get back to beginner's mind? And does GPT help us do that? Anyway, just wondering, have you dabbled at all in discovery for new products?
David asks, have I used this to dabble in discovery for new products? The answer is yes, and I'm not going to tell you what the result was because I'm going to make that new product and I'm going to launch it later this year. And back.
So my company, we have our own LLMs, we don't have like issues with sharing industry information or client information. Have you ever utilized this kind of a prompt with it having the knowledge of your industry? And you know what I'm asking?
Yeah. So she's asking, have I trained this with industry domain specific knowledge?
Yeah.
Yes, I have done that. The answers are much, much, much better. I don't have access to a proprietary LLM. We don't have one of those running, but even in Claude or GPT, yes, if you load it with domain specific information, it gets frighteningly good. Yes. Yeah.
So you weren't able to solve it from maybe in a day or weeks, and now you used technology to do it in almost minutes.
Yeah.
How do you go about taking this insights and setting those expectations by the leader?
Oh, if I knew, I would tell you. No, I know. I know. He's the question is, how do you take this evidence of increased productivity back to leadership? And I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to explain this speech to my leaders when they see it on YouTube. No, I don't. I don't know. It's a great question. There's so much raw, especially when you're in more legacy oriented industries. There's so much raw misunderstanding or misinformation or just pure fear that is difficult, right? It's not only difficult for the leaders to hear, but it's also difficult for people in the position that they've been in for the last 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, to all of a sudden be 10x more productive. Where did that come from? Do I really want to reveal that I can be 10x more productive? Or do I want to just work 1 hour a day and then go golfing or whatever? And the other question is, why wouldn't I? right? So there's a lot of fascinating questions like that that I don't know, I don't know what the answers are. And I think, I think some of it will just naturally start to shake out, but I think there will also be some difficult conversations, yeah.
Yeah, just to follow up on that as well, I can imagine. Another fear that immediately jumped to mind, which is the leadership saying, well, how come you couldn't see that? Isn't that what we pay you for? You know,
Yeah.
why do you need this tool? Are you not able to do your job without it? Kind of because that's the kind of feedback that I've also heard from other people that they get from leadership, of these tools. I mean, we don't need them because that's what we pay you for.
Yeah, so the yeah, so the comment is, why do you need this tool? We pay you to do this. That's true. You do.
And how did you miss that?
How did you miss it? Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. How did Nokia miss the smartphone, right? They had lots of people being paid to not miss it, and yet they did. And they got their lunch and dinner and breakfast eaten right in front of them. So I don't know. Yeah, companies are full of unenlightened leaders, and I'm not sure how you address that. I don't know. I wish I knew. Yeah, right.
How accurate is your output on that? And how much do you trust it and how much do you go back to validate it?
I trust it about half the time and I validate it 100% of the time. Yeah, it's not very accurate yet. But I think, I was talking to David before this. I think that's the case here, right? And it's one of the reasons I would say don't rush into relying on these on a large language model as a trusted co-pilot, pun intended, because they can hallucinate to your face, and it's a big problem unless you're validating. Yeah,
But it shortens up your time from 30.
No question.
And then add in.
No question. Absolutely. No, the amount of, even when it's full on tripping, it still gets you further ahead than you could on your own. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
What applications of this, like, you think are like the most, context limited, I guess? Makes sense.
So the question is, what applications are the most context limited? I don't know. I think the first thing that comes to mind is if you can't anonymize the data, if you can't take the sharp point off of the information that you're putting in here from a privacy perspective, then I think you're very limited. Even if you do turn off the settings, unless you have your own LLM, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't put it in here. I think it's a problem, right? It's not worth it at that point. I think there are other things that you could put in here that would give you directional answers that could help you without having to put that in. Yeah, back.
So kind of a comment on that. So we work with law firms and really big legal cases that are all very private and very proprietary, as well as medical stuff. We can do anything outside of
Right.
everything we do, everything we
Yeah.
It's kind of lock, stock, and barrel, every step of the way. We control it, we control that,
Yep.
We do all of our safeguards and our validation, and we like use purple to make sure that we're not hallucinating, and then, we take out the output only after it's gone through all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, especially in the domain that you're in, I clearly valid, and I think it'd be great if we all could do that.
Wait, it's another thing. All you need is one of those new M4 packs.
Oh, all right.
You just spend the $6,000 in the hardware.
All right, I'll do that. Yeah, in back, sorry, I'll get to you next, Shannon.
Look at all of that response.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I might be totally off in left field. I'm a teacher, but I don't know all the ins and outs. But my question is, I just went to a training at Microsoft Innovation Center recently, and they were telling me that Copilot stays within the company boundaries. and
Yeah.
will Ask GPT questions and pull information from GPT
Mhm.
and protect the data that way. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's totally true or not, but in the school districts, student privacy is super important, and maybe we can't. And so school districts are very afraid to get into any of this, because of that. And, that's what we need to find, is something that will.
I think you make a, so the question is around student privacy and what LLM models will protect that a little bit better? Does Copilot do that? Do other more bespoke implementations do that, specifically around student privacy or any healthcare privacy, anything like that? I don't know the answer. I think it's a great question. There's so many great questions around AI right now that I haven't heard great answers to yet. Justin, tell us what the answers are right now. Yeah, Troy.
I just got a question on what the worry is about. And I can go down the same path, of course, and I don't put a lot of stuff out there. So is the overall worry, Bison, let's say you just were open book.
Mhm.
And you just said, oh, our deliveries are only 40%. So is the concern that your competitor will go, what's Bison's delivery rate? And boom, it'll come up. Is that the concern? Or
Well, I think that's definitely a concern. I mean,
that could happen?
yeah, I think,
Yeah,
well, I don't know if it could happen or not. I think it's a concern, right?
right. Okay.
When your data goes into a model
Yeah.
that trains a model, because it does.
Yeah,
Can a competitor ask that model,
specific about you.
right,
Yeah.
what's in
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Could we do that about our competitors? Yes, we could. Would it give us information? I don't know. Could we get real clever about how we ask it? And then would we believe it? I don't know. But the concern is, why would we expose that information in a way that could disadvantage us? Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to say I'm already, to the degree that I am multiple times this week have gone into chat and other kinds of things and said, give me annual revenues for this private company, give me this about this private company, partially to see, does it make sense, but partially to see like how accurate is it for that kind of relatively proprietary information. And so if you are internal actually feeding it, there's somebody likely just doing research about you right now.
Yeah.
Magic keyboard just, extracts the data you just put into it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even could be worse.
Yeah.
I'd also like to add, like, even if from a school perspective, like I work with experience, we work with a lot of sensitive data. And so from a school perspective, if you don't have like a development team to build guardrails, even with guardrails built in, we're still hesitant about that stuff. So even if somebody, from our perspective, we created a chatbot, and our biggest concern was, what if a user puts in PII into that chat and it's in the chatbot? Essentially, before we actually had our own LLM, we were utilizing ChatGPT and just built our own guardrails around it and
Yeah.
put certain information for it to only know that certain information.
Yeah.
But when people are putting in PII data into the chat,
Yeah.
that's where it gets sticky, and that's why we built our own LLM.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think even to your point, I think even, switching to a model where you have more control over, what you're feeding, and even if you're using the GPT engine via API, where you can put guardrails around it, you may not have to, build your own LLM, but you can have somewhat of a garden. Yeah, I think that's if you're going to deploy it for your product managers or for your developers or for your students, then yeah, I think that makes sense all day long. What do we know what does ChatGPT get for credits? It's expensive as hell, is it not? to use the API? Is anyone buying it? Say that again? $200, okay. Not terrible then. All right. Cool. Well,
I run,
yeah.
APIs a lot, and, you know, thousands of calls a day. And I'm spending $5 a month.
Oh, really? Okay, okay,
It's hundreds, thousands of penny per phone.
okay, not bad, okay. Well, that's what I got. If you wanna break up into groups to do some experimentation, feel free. If you don't, then feel free to don't. But-
No notes.
But thank you for taking the time.